Greetings and welcome back to Room 303. We are in the middle of a 30 lecture series on Gibran's The Prophet, and we now turn to poem 17 on pain, or this is lecture 17 on pain. We're back to the question of theodicy in our big five, that is to say epistemology, what you can know, ontology, who you are, psychology, the study of the individual mind, sociology, the study of the collective mind, and then that last of our big five in 303, theodicy. Why must there be pain and suffering? And Al Mustafa is going to have as will not shock us, a special kind of view of the value of pain and suffering. We're in the middle of another trinity, as I've called it. We were just finishing with reason and passion. We come to pain, and then ultimately, after this poem, to self-knowledge. Now, our assumptions are that we've hoped that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side, our playlist. We gave a set of introductory comments, and in that introductory comments, and those very early comments in Lecture 1 and 2, I pointed out that much of this series is rooted in the loss at Worland High School of a beloved student of ours, and the pain that incurred, in large measure, is the reason why these lectures are being given. So, knowing that, I knew that we would come to this passage on pain and that would be important for us. As I said, we just finished with reason and passion on reason and passion. Now, let's point out right away for background information. When he talks about pain, Al-Mustafa and of course Gibran are not so much talking about physical pain, but rather we might call it spiritual or emotional pain. And of course the theodicy question, why must there be pain and suffering? Well, usually have a subsidiary question, why this happened to me? And we've already pointed out that the theodicy of Gibran is to no longer ask, why did this happen to me? But rather to learn, and I would underline that word, why did this happen for me? And that changing that 2 to 4 allows us to no longer be a victim in a universe where all this stuff happens to us, but rather we're in control. It's not that we celebrate pain. No, not at all. We would obviously wish that we had less of it. But when it happens, it's propedeutic. It's important, right? Now, the question of why did it happen for me suggests for Gibran that painful truths are often kind of hidden and locked away, these truths, and they're inside, he's going to call it a shell of ignorance, of denial, and the process, the goal ultimately will then be to find our way to the healing process. And then we're going to have some metaphors, the sunshine metaphor, the seasons metaphor, and with that, the idea of the winters of grief, as he'll call it, will remind us of our study of Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. You'll remember we gave full lectures at learnstrong.net on this poem, but you can go back and write it to ground if you're interested. But you'll remember that final line, if winter come, can spring be far behind, no matter how bad the winter is, spiritually, emotionally. Remember, there's always going to be a spring that will come. That's what the seasons teach us. Let's enjoy here this observation. And a woman spoke. It's interesting that the woman is not actually named who she is or what she does. In some ways, you could point out, this is kind of like she's anonymous, and therefore we're talking now about the universal, we might say, the universal nature of pain, we might say. A woman spoke saying, tell us of pain. And he said, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. Again, don't ask why this happened to me. Ask why this happened for me. And of course, when we are dealing with serious spiritual emotive pain, this is often very hard to do. And yet, notice his word picture. He starts with the idea of a shell, and then he goes to the idea of fruit, the center of the fruit. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. All about perspicacity, as we said in our lectures on Plato's Republic, insight, the ability to see through the pain and understand. If I had the perspective, what is often been referred to as God's eye view or whatever, if I had that perspective, I would be able to see that so much of the pain of my life is the source of so much of the joy of my life. And you would accept the seasons of your heart. Now, this idea of the seasons is, of course, central to reading Gibran, no question. Even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you'd watch with serenity. A little bit later it's going to be tranquility. Through the winters of your grief. And again, this takes us to Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. If winter come, can spring be far behind. The idea of serenity is a central idea teaching of Gibran. This is what we're ultimately looking for. Peace, serenity, understanding, perspicacity, as we said. Then he'll say something this is more heavy words, hard words, as we talked about it in earlier. Much of your pain is self-chosen. Ouch. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears. Again, some of these lines, we've commented on this, those of us who are poets, we'd give our whole life to just write one set of lines, and he does this again and again and again in these poems. It's quite remarkable. Notice how he comments on it. Much of the pain is self-chosen. In other words, we create much of the chaos that is the source of pain in our lives. It's the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Of course, we're thinking of the Mark passage, physician, heal thyself, no question. Therefore, trust the physician. This is that God self from Crime and Punishment that he's talking about. Trust yourself. You'll remember the Delphi oracle, to know thyself, to trust thyself, will be an analog of that. We'll have more to say about the Delphi oracle in the next passage. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. Again, we go from serenity to tranquility. I'm intrigued as well by the idea of silence. The power of sitting, this will sound very much in the contemplative tradition, whether it's Christian or it's Buddhist, to sit within the pain and to witness it or to watch it or to see how it moves and evolves and changes. For example, in the Vipassana tradition, to name it in some way. And yet on the other side, to find the healing. For his hand, that is to say, the physician's, though heavy and hard, no question, some of the language of these poems is heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And again, this is back to the God self of Crime and Punishment poem. And the cup he brings, of course, this cup of pain makes us think of the cup of Christ, makes us think of the Holy Grail and the Arthurian motif. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, hey guys, lots of pain. As we just started this lecture off, being reminded of our tragic loss. The pain is going to burn our lips. It has, this cup, been fashioned of the clay, which the potter, notice capitalized, has moistened with his own sacred tears. In other words, there's a lot of stuff we have to learn. Let's jump to 2a. There's a lot of stuff we have to learn that can only be learned through the experience of going through the pain. At 2b, the word pictures here are amazing, from shells and stones to, of course, this idea of the physician within. It's quite a remarkable thing. At 3a, we mentioned Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. I'd like to point out, though, think about what we said when we did Dante's Divine Commedia, the Divine Comedy. It's all of our lectures at learnstrong.net. Go and run those to ground. What did we say again and again through that? That Dante is in fact arguing that we don't go to hell. We go through it. We have to find a way to get through the pain. And on the other side is, of course, the healing, the paradise, right? I also would like to challenge us to think about the poetry of Walt Whitman. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net that we called Talks with Walt. That is to say, all of the poems of Leaves of Grass. Again and again and again, he's constantly teaching us about the power of pain as a propedeutic. And then, as well, the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are now in the process of giving full lectures on all of the 1,775 poems of Emily Dickinson. And again, she'll make the same argument that pain is an instructor and can lead to enlightenment if we're capable of it. Finally, at 3b, how are you going to own a poem like this, a set of lines like this? What was a time in your life when you learned from and through pain and ultimately found yourself finding healing, even though the cup burned your lips? We're not saying it's easy, are we? Thank you.